Hello guys, I decided to record a second part of the Schizoid video as I feel like I should supply a little bit more information, and there are things that I didn't really talk about in the first part. I believe that understanding a schizoid personality type can help many people to actually realize their patterns of behavior, and perhaps that can also boost one's security level because the person will feel like there's more people out there who are similar, who struggle with similar things. So if one person realizes this, then the personality disorder is not a disorder anymore because there are similar people out there. So a person doesn't feel that isolated anymore. So first of all, from a philosophical perspective, a schizoid personality initially develops from existential insecurity. Basically, a schizoid person fears that doing certain things or being placed in certain situations will destroy a person internally. And at the same time, a schizoid fears that expressing one's needs and desires and acting upon one's wishes will also not be quite right, because that would mean that a person will be isolated from other people, if that makes sense. So what happens is that an average person's life revolves around, enjoying life, enjoying things, doing different things for one's enjoyment. And also, most importantly, people do things in order to meet certain needs, certain desires, certain wishes. In contrast, schizoid's life revolves around preserving oneself, preserving one's identity, preserving one's autonomy. So there's that contrast. So if we take a look at schizoid traits, that can cause a person to remain kind of unable to enjoy normal pleasures in life, enjoy things that other people seem to enjoy, because schizoid's first and most important need is to preserve oneself, preserve one's identity. And that anxiety about losing oneself, losing one's autonomy, links to another anxiety about being an object for another people. That links to a fact that schizoid fears that other people will objectify him or her, in a sense that schizoid will not be recognized as an individual in other people's eyes, if that makes sense. And if a schizoid cannot be recognized in other people's eyes, that means that schizoid doesn't exist, if that makes sense. So that's quite similar to what narcissists do. However, their motivation is quite different, because narcissists will try to act superior to other people in order to confirm that he's not inferior, he's not weak. Schizoid, in turn, will need to act in special ways in order to be recognized by other people as an individual, as a person with own willpower, with own wishes or desires, whether these desires exist or not. So that again links to a fact what I've said before, that everything revolves about self-preservation in a schizoid person. However, because as a child, schizoid was kind of denied in expressing their needs or wishes, later in life, as an adult, as an example, a person is unaware of what he or she wants or he or she needs. So by a paradox, on one side, the schizoid tries to appear like an individual to other people, but usually he or she ends up as a passive person because of unawareness of one's needs and desires. So one of the coping mechanisms for that anxiety, for that passivity, is to objectify other people. Objectify in a sense that a schizoid learns that other people operate or behave through certain algorithms of behavior. So if a person or if a schizoid is able to recognize these patterns in another person's behavior, then schizoid thinks that another person is acting like a robot, is acting unconsciously because everything is predictable. And I believe that strongly links to being an INTJ as well, because as we know, INTJs are kind of good in predicting other people's behavior, predicting what's going on in the environment. So again, going back to schizoid's coping mechanisms against that depersonalization or being objectified, when a schizoid kind of objectify other people and see them as robots, as unconscious background elements, that basically robs another people of power to objectify and depersonalize schizoid in the first place. That's why it's a coping mechanism. So it's not like that schizoid do it on purpose in order to, I don't know, abuse other people or take advantage of other people. It's just a coping mechanism to remove other people from the awareness. However, at the same time, as being INTJ myself, usually it's difficult to perceive other people as, you know, autonomous individuals, conscious individuals, because most people kind of act upon their unconscious patterns of behavior. So everything becomes predictable. So it's difficult for a schizoid to relate, or for an INTJ to relate to other people, because schizoid sees them as objects. That makes sense. So because schizoid learns to see these things, basically he or she becomes quite skilled in observing other people's behavior since childhood. It's sort of like being a psychopath, but you know, you still got feelings and emotions. So it's not like you just do it in order to take advantage of other people. You do it in order to understand what's going on in your environment. But the paradox is that because schizoid learns to observe other people, learns to distinguish certain patterns of behavior, that automatically places a schizoid in kind of socially disabled position, because he doesn't operate on the same level as other people. He operates kind of from a rather distant point in order to see the whole situation, the whole behavior, to see a past and the future at the same time. So again, these coping mechanisms, these strategies, they kind of link with being INTJ. Because as we know, INTJ is kind of good at seeing the whole picture and imagine different possibilities. So yeah, I hope you can see the similarity here. And it's not only the observation skills of other people's behavior that the schizoid develops, but that gives him a skill to actually gain an evidence that most people act unconsciously in a predetermined way, in a predictable way. So a schizoid is able to gain evidence from that, you know, kind of set up tests, kind of see that if you do one thing, the person will act in a specific manner. If you do the other thing, the other person will act in a different way. So from one side, apparently, it's a disability, because that places the schizoid in isolated position to other people. They cannot relate to other people because they are kind of behind in order to observe the whole picture. But from another side, I'm not entirely sure whether it's a disability, because that gives a schizoid certain skills and perhaps his observations are quite true most of the times as well. And so because of that awareness, a schizoid is perceiving other people as objects who are unable to harm his identity. So everything is kind of connected to each other. That schizoid is not really able to act warm towards other people, act empathetically towards other people. So the natural reaction is to remain kind of cold, aloof, and distant. Because how can you act warm towards unconscious objects or simple robots? So yeah, but not all people can be perceived in that way. And that's where the sensitivity of a schizoid appears. As I've said in the previous video, schizoids are extremely sensitive people on the internal level, despite the fact that they appear cold. And so when the other person objectifies the schizoid, it's extremely painful and it's extremely devastating, because the identity of a schizoid is extremely fragile. It's extremely sensitive to any criticism, to any wrong assumptions being made by other people. So again, there's another conflict that from one side, schizoid fears of being objectified and personalized by other people, but at the same time, schizoid desires to have that intimate connection and to be perceived as accurate by other people as possible. But because of the first point prevents schizoid to actually develop that intimate bonds from other people, because on the first place, other people are just unconscious objects, unable to understand what's going on in schizoid's mind, what's going on with schizoid feelings and emotions. So again, that's why it's called personality disorder, because it's full of conflict, it's full of kind of complexities that contradict each other. So if you take one element, then you have to take another element. And if you take away some elements, then it basically robs the person of identity and personality. But hopefully I illustrated how schizoid can actually correlate with being an INTJ, and there's many traits that basically overlap with each other. And again, as I probably mentioned before, it's just a matter of perspective of whether you want to perceive INTJ or schizoid as a disorder or disability, or whether it would be just better to perceive it as a difference, because a person developed in a different manner than most of the people around him or her.